Although I don't really play favorites with the characters from Friendship is Magic, it should be apparent by now that I've taken a fancy to Princess Celestia, as I do find her to be the most interesting of the princesses. Where the other princesses have more screen time to show their character, Celestia is shown to operate mostly as a mentor who takes a very hands-off approach to teaching so that she can subtly guide and simultaneously test her students when the time is right. She also always has an air of confidence and poise, so much so that even her frontal attacks appear to have a bit of a flourish to them. These things, combined with the knowledge that she has kept Equestria in peace for a millennia, always makes me wonder what it was really like, what it is really like, and how she got to such a state of zen. The implications are amazing, and I've always been a sucker for mise en scène. But of course, all of this begs the questions. Does she get sick of being in her position? What would it be like if she were to take a day off? And what would it be like if she was just another pony, as she sometimes seems to express a desire for? Thankfully, I was suggested to take a look at Sunny Skies All Day Long by PhantomFox. It's a concept that I know has been done a few times, but I personally don't see it happen very often, so right away I was intrigued. Now, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the various aspects of this story in no particular order and with minimal spoilers. The story, as I may have hinted at previously, is about Celestia growing tired of being royalty and longing for a vacation. Not just from her duties, but from the altogether formalities of being the princess. Figuring that the only way to do so is to disguise herself, Celestia takes on the persona of Sunny Skies, an average Pegasus pony. She then ventures into Ponyville to see what it would be like to hang out with Twilight and her friends when they don't believe that they're in the princess's prestigious presence. From what I've been told by Analysis Brony and Deverer, who read a lot more FiMfiction than I do, Sunny Skies tends to be a recurring trope that's usually surrounded by this premise. This doesn't really surprise me, as I've helped proofread a story called Sugar Free, which features Sunny Skies as a unicorn and starts off on a very similar premise. Admittedly, I'm often turned off from reading these types of stories because many of them have poorly handled and deviant romantic themes within them. I was pleasantly surprised to find that this was not the case in PhantomFox's story. Instead, we are given a very fun and innocent look into the daily lives of the main six, as well as getting to see just how well Celestia would fit into all of this as an average civilian. The story is taken from the third-person limited perspective, but exhibits some minor inconsistencies towards the beginning. Third-person Omniscient handles all of the characters' actions, thoughts, and emotions simultaneously so that the reader can understand the full context. This is how the story appears to begin with Celestia and Luna's conversation, and is indicated by the mention of Luna listening intently, something that we wouldn't know if it was just Celestia's point of view. However, this perspective is not handled in its true form and fades into the limited perspective halfway through the conversation when the author starts describing Luna's body language and dialogue the way that Celestia sees it, as opposed to looking within Luna's thoughts as it was being done before. Once Luna exits the scene, the style stays grounded in the third-person limited perspective with no further inconsistencies that I was able to find. The narrative style is enjoyable, although more telling than showing. However, this seems to have been done on purpose. The story describes most thought and action in relatively basic detail, but during key moments of interaction, the descriptions become slightly more in-depth. The pacing slows down just slightly to take in all of the new information and make it clear to the reader without it being overbearing. One of such moments was Sunny Sky's first interaction with Pinkie Pie, when what can almost be described as a staring match shows almost exactly what goes on in each other's heads without breaking perspective or character, and has a great payoff. The format, despite being very common for fanfiction in general, is the weakest part of the style. Although there are a lack of grammatical errors and no missing punctuation from what I've noticed in my read-throughs, all of the lines are double-spaced, which is something that I was always taught to save for switching perspectives and/or showing a passage of time. Paragraphs are unsubstantial and highlight the blocky parts of the writing style with single lines of descriptions that would have been best placed attached to a character's dialogue. The only upside I can see to this formatting is that some people might find it easier to read. True to form, Celestia is shown to be a smart character with a sense of humor and flaws that become apparent when she's taken out of her element. When the situation is right, she's kept just as insightful as you would expect a character like her to be. We also see Luna and the main six in this story, and they are also handled very well. At first, I wasn't certain which perspective I should view the characterization from. On the grounds of going strictly canon, Celestia would seem out of character. At the beginning of the story, she's very forward and outspoken while discussing her plight with Luna. During the rest of the story, she's casual on a level that I find difficult to associate with Celestia, but I'll acknowledge the possibility that it could just be me that has this problem. The Celestia I see in the canon is polite, formal, and enjoys time off from her duties to be pampered. Even then, she holds an air of formality. Having had to either be this way or at least present herself this way for so long causes me to have a gut instinct that this would carry over even into her disguise. However, there is an opposite side to this argument, this being that the canon hasn't yet shown Celestia interacting with any characters in a truly casual setting. Despite my first impressions, it wouldn't be much of a stretch for her character to be completely forward and talk so informally in private quarters and with those that she's comfortable with, like her sister. If that were the case, that aspect of her character could be carried over into the alternate persona of Sunny Skies even easier than it would be if she were still in the form of Celestia, thus rendering my previous point completely moot. Luna seems to be handled similarly to Celestia, and although it's a rather minor point, I definitely disagree with this characterization because we have seen Luna maintain her mannerisms in similar situations. The character development and conflict of this story go largely hand in hand. As Celestia moves from one interaction to the next, we begin to see her in more vulnerable situations where she is either rusty or completely inexperienced. However, her curious nature almost always drives her forward into the situation, thus leading into the conflicts. The main conflict is a softer version of man versus man that's induced through man versus self. Celestia's eagerness to interact with the main six leads her to talking with them or working with them in ways that she's not familiar with. These conflicts arise when Celestia must maintain her Sunny Skies cover to those around her while also recovering from her own tendency to sound like a discordant Applejack within the situation. Through this, Celestia and the main six learn a lot about each other by the end of the story. I definitely recommend this story. At about 8,500 words, it flows and feels like it could be an episode. It offers a very fun spin on familiar characters within a fanfiction trope that is mishandled more often than not. If the writing style had been my decision, Celestia's insight into the various characters would have been shown by briefly describing the facial expressions, body language, and verbal fluctuations rather than explicitly stating what emotions she saw from them. Or perhaps it's better the way it is, where Celestia processes what she's seeing in the other characters without consciously acknowledging all of the aforementioned subtle and non-verbal nuances, thus possibly implying that she registers these actions subconsciously after over a millennium of practice. I'd like to see your thoughts on this story once you read it, or if you have read it already. I'd also like to know about your experiences with other stories that feature Sunny Skies. The few that I have encountered are either subtly or overtly taking place in an alternate universe, with the only thing that the characters have in common with their canon counterparts are their names. The only exception being the previously mentioned Sugar Free by Wade. I promise that there's no personal bias going into that statement, but I will understand if you don't believe me. So, let me know if you think that I'm wrong or have missed anything, and I can't wait to see your thoughts on all this. If you have any thoughts on this video, or would like to hear something discussed, you can leave a comment below, or drop comments, questions, topic suggestions, and review suggestions by following BronyBuck on Tumblr, or sending an email to bronydebates@yahoo.com. Also, feel free to check out my Patreon page to see how you can support my channel and what you'll get in return. Big thanks to all of those supporting me already. Have a great day, and I look forward to hearing from all of you soon.